So, Spider-Man got nerfed. Now, before we get into this, I just want to say, yes, I am an Eternity Spider-Man player. I'm not a one-trick. I do play a lot of characters. But also, most important of all, I've actually used to be a top 500 support player in Overwatch, and also started out Marvel Rivals as a strategist maining Luna. So hopefully I can give you a good, well-rounded opinion. For those of you guys that are living under a rock, the devs released a dev talk yesterday saying a bunch of things regarding performance-based SR, but also, in particular, they teased Spider-Man's amazing combo damage range will be slightly decreased. Obviously, there's a lot of people going around online talking about how this was broken and this needed to be fixed and it was too big. So let me just take you through this real quick. So for those of you guys that don't know, the amazing combo is his uppercut. And it has about 4 meters of range. Now, this 4 meters is for a couple of reasons. First off, speed. Spider-Man plays quite quick, right? He's the fastest moving character in the game. He flies around. And if he didn't have at least a bit of give on his ability, it probably would be very, very hard to hit. Secondly, netcoding. The way netcoding works, because of the way that, characters move around on the screen, what you think should be hit doesn't actually hit. This also happens a lot with Black Panther's dashes, where you think the dash hits, but it actually doesn't. Client server, all that jazz. Now, when they talked about the nerfs, they mentioned the damage range. Now, that could mean a couple things. Either this means that it's no longer going to be 4 meters and it's going to be something like 2 meters, right? Or it could mean that it's going to be 4 meters, but it's going to have damage drop off, which means that as you get further and further away from Spider-Man, you're not going to do the same amount of damage. In my opinion, that'll be the better outcome of the two instead of just flat out reducing the range. But I'll get into that later on and why I think we may or may not need it. So before we get into this patch, I just want to talk about real quick the state of Spider-Man right now and essentially how he feels after his buffs from season 1.5. For those of you guys that don't know, Spider-Man received a buff in 1.5. We're currently in season 2, where they reduced the web cluster's energized time from 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds. Now this is big because basically, as you can see the clusters in the middle of my screen, they have to regen. Now they regen a lot faster, meaning that Spidey has more uptime, especially because most of his damage comes from exploding the cluster, as you can see. So this huge change, and I actually think this is the change that brought Spider-Man into a very good place. He wasn't in a very good spot before, but because of this and also alongside some other buffs, I think that it got him into a decent place. The only thing I don't like about Spider-Man right now is that 9 out of 10 times, maybe 8 out of 10 times, he relies on Venom. Now, speaking of Venom, I want to talk about something real quick that a lot of the community seems to have an uninformed opinion about. Everybody who doesn't play Spider-Man seems to think that Spider-Man can freely one-shot people. All you gotta do is land a cluster and you can one-shot. I kind of want to prove this wrong and kind of end this debate. The only time I ever thought that this was a sort of valid argument was when Spider-Man has Venom, because he needs to cluster, uses Get Over Here, uses Uppercut, and then Venom. And he can kill 250 HP targets. As a reason I said the word kill there and not one shot. Mostly because Spider-Man gives 2 indicators when he's about to engage you. First one being the cluster, which obviously isn't the most guaranteed engagement, but it's something that you can see above your head, and it indicates that, oh, Spider-Man might be trying to target you, might be coming onto you. Now, the second more obvious one is for his Get Over Here, which he needs to land a cluster first, and then use the Get Over Here, which is the pull. You do see a sticky on your screen, like you see the web on your screen, that tells you that Spider-Man is on his way to you. These 2 indicators are enough for you to react to this one-shot. A one-shot implies that there's no way to really counter it. It just sort of happens and that's it. You're kind of done. You can't do anything if you get hit by the first thing. Meaning if you get hit by cluster, you're dead. So this is why I kind of wanted to talk about this, because it's not true. Albeit there are some characters, like there used to be Iron Man, there used to be Moon Knight. These characters who, when they were clustered, it was a guaranteed one-shot or one-shot. Oh yeah, a guaranteed one-shot because they couldn't really do anything if you had Venom. If you fast forward now to season 2, all the flyers have been essentially buffed to counteract this in some way. Iron Man now gets shields with Zamp Up. Human Torch gets shields when he dives or even with a Sue team up. And Storm can use her Amp Up, which can automatically hit Spider-Man when he's in range before he can even do anything. Now, regardless of all these characters, Spider-Man targets strategists, and strategists are the ones that are complaining about this the most. This is where I have trouble with this statement. Rocket Raccoon can dash away from you and also self-heal. Mantis can sleep you. Loki can use his lamps or even teleport. Adam Warlock can use his soul bond or his heal and also has a res if he does end up dying. Luna Snow can freeze you and also has self-healing from both of her abilities. Cloak and Dagger can get shrouded and also self-heal. Invisible Woman can push you away or even shield so that you can't even hit your cluster initially, and Jeff can just go underground. Every strategist has a way to deal with this. Obviously, some are harder than the others. Luna has to land her snowball, Mantis has to land her sleep. Those are skill shots. But then characters like Adam Warlock, Pop Soulbond doesn't need aim. His heal doesn't need aim. It's also an instant burst heal. In fact, Adam Warlock is one of the hardest strategists to face when you're playing Spider-Man, or any diver for that matter. So a lot of these characters actually have ways to counter Spider-Man that don't require you to hit a skill shot. Obviously, some of them do. On top of all this, nothing is free. Everybody says it's a free one-shot as long as you land the cluster. Yeah, you gotta land the cluster. And Spider-Man is moving at Mach 10. And on top of all of this, Spider-Man's clusters are a projectile, meaning that they're not hit scan like someone like Hela, who you just hover your mouse over, and if you click, you hit them. Obviously, I'm not saying one is harder than the other, one is easier than the other. It is just a different skill set. The difficulty with Spider-Man doesn't necessarily come from his aim, like it does with Hela. It comes from choosing the right time to engage. If you do end up landing that cluster in the free one-shot, and you go in and try to get the kill, there's so many abilities that can stop you, stun you, ground you, and just flat out kill you if you pick the wrong timing. Hela, on the other hand, can just sit back in the comfort of her team, not in melee range, and just click left click. Now, as time goes on, people get better at games. If you look at the inception of any esports and you compare it to now, the min-max difference is insane. Obviously, same thing happens with Spider-Man. In Season 0, there were probably like 3 Spider-Man players, including myself, in top 500. Then when Season 1 came around, it kind of increased and you saw a bit more of an influx of Spider-Man players. Now in Season 2, it's almost every game. Now in the same vein of people getting better at things, people also get better at countering things. Now, for example, it's a no-brainer that if you have a Spider-Man on the enemy team who is doing really well, you just pick Namor and you will counter him. Maybe if you're playing tank, you'll go the Thing. These changes almost happen instantaneously nowadays. So a big sentiment that I see online a lot is that Spider-Man doesn't have any counters. Now that bans are in gold, once you ban Namor, he's free to do whatever he wants. But that's just simply not true. Namor is definitely a hard counter and probably the only hard counter to Spider-Man, that once Namor is picked, he can do virtually nothing. But characters shouldn't have that many hard counters in game. That's why there are things like soft counters, which are mostly skill-based matchups. The Thing is a soft counter to Spider-Man. If he's paying attention to the Spider-Man, all he's got to do is wait for the Spider-Man to go in, and as soon as he does, he jumps to his strategist or whoever he's engaging on, slams the ground, and now suddenly Spider-Man can't use his amazing combo, can't use his get over here, can't double jump, and can't swing away. Suddenly, he's helpless in the middle of your team and he will die. But this is a skill-based thing. This is what Marvel Rivals needs more of. None of this free win stuff. If you are better than the Spider-Man, then you should be able to counter him. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the ban rate. Spider-Man has an insane ban rate, almost making him the top banned character in the game currently. He's actually second to Groot, and I feel like majority of low elo players don't actually understand why you ban Groot. But Spider-Man probably would be first if that wasn't the case, with a whopping 31.18% ban rate. That is insane. Now, the thing that I've always found hilarious is that in high elo, we rarely ever ban Spider-Man. In fact, if you look at Celestial Plus, you'll find that he comes after Iron Fist, Human Torch, Groot, and Hela, with a 12.8% ban rate. If Spider-Man is so broken, shouldn't he just be banned all the time, even in high elo? Now, a lot of people say that it's because they feel helpless and they just can't catch Spider-Man. And the people mostly saying this are the strategists, as they keep getting focused by. This is a tale as old as time. No matter what hero shooter you're playing, the flankers have always had the job to kill the backline. And so, the backline are the ones who are annoyed by him the most. The reason being is because you can't just autopilot your gameplay. A lot of support players will just focus on their tanks, heal up their DPS, and then want to throw out a snowball every now and then. But as soon as they're taken out of that rhythm, and now suddenly they need to save this snowball for the Spider-Man who's coming for them, now suddenly it requires their attention. Another thing on top of this is that they now have to poke out the Spider-Man coming for them whilst also maintaining their attention on their tanks and their DPS. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so many abilities in the game that help strategists fight flankers. And let's say you're playing Luna and you're unable to hit your snowball on them. Well then, swapping matters just as much for you guys too. The same way you'll see a Spider-Man going 0-6 and you're like, you know what, maybe you should be swapping off Spider-Man and maybe go someone like Moon Knight or Hela. Why is this? Maybe they'll do better on these other characters which are better designed for the enemy team. So then, why wouldn't this apply to you too? Say you're unable to hit your snowballs on Luna. Well, okay, you've got flankers. Maybe go Loki. Maybe go Rocket. Maybe go Atom. Swapping matters just as much for you guys as it does for the DPS. Now, another common sentiment I hear all the time is that Spider-Man has the fastest charging ult in the game. If you look at this chart, it's a bit old, but the values haven't really changed that much, besides for the Strategist. Spider-Man has the fastest charging ultimate in the game. Everyone's saying that this is just unfair, you can team wipe with it, he gets overhealth from it, why is it the fastest charging ultimate in the game? Now, the reason being is that it's Spider-Man. If you look at the stats for any game that Spider-Man is involved in, you'll rarely ever see him top damage, if at all. As you can see, I have the most final hits, but I have less damage than my tanks and my second DPS. If you look at the enemy team, I also have less damage than the other DPS. If we go into this game, which was a loss, I once again have less damage than both my tanks and my second DPS. And the same with their team. The only time I actually came close to my team's damage is this one, where I had more than 5 times my team's final hits, 31 eliminations, and I just about beat my mag in damage by 400. Spider-Man might have the fastest charging ult in the game, but he also has the lowest damage output of any other DPS and even tanks sometimes. So that is why it takes so long to build and why it's balanced out versus someone, say, Moon Knight, who requires the same amount of charge but does infinitely more damage than any other DPS. Speaking of damage, that is also why his uppercut really needs to be this big. One of the ways you build that ult charge is by drive-bying into the enemy and uppercutting them as you're flying by. Doing this means you'll reduce his overall damage, which also means it'll take that much longer for him to build his ultimate, meaning you're double nerfing Spider-Man. Now to answer the question, do I think it's necessary? Yeah. 4 meters is kind of crazy and it is a bit too wide, so that's why I think that what I said earlier about the damage drop-off probably is the way to go. You're still able to displace enemies, you're still able to be a nuisance and build your ult charge this way, but it will be reduced and it won't do that much damage. On top of all of this, as you guys may have read into the patch notes, supports are getting a damage buff, meaning they can fight back, which I think is great. However, some strategists don't need it and I really hope that they choose wisely. Let me know down below if you think he needs this nerf or if I was able to change your mind at all about Spider-Man in general. Thanks for watching. Peace.